One of the reasons that I think that this having lunch with a Muslim day, or whatever we end up calling it, who knows what we'll call it in its final form, having a meal with a Muslim, having coffee with a Muslim, taking a walk with a Muslim, talking with a Muslim. The thing that I think is important here is that we strike up conversations, not matches. The moment that you start, in my view, wanting to burn a book, I think it's at that moment that you've stopped talking to somebody. So in the 1930s, when the Jews were in Germany, you knew there was trouble for the Jews coming when people started burning their books, and when Jewish authors were getting thrown into the bonfire. Sigmund Freud once joked in the 1930s, well, they're burning my books, but at least they're not burning me. But of course that's a very unsettling joke that he made, because 10 years later, of course, they were essentially killing Jews and then burning their ashes collectively. The other thing here is the issue of collective guilt. The thing that I found most disturbing about the notion that we would want to burn Qurans or prevent Muslims from having a mosque in New York City a couple of blocks down from 9/11 is our assumption that Muslims are in some sense collectively guilty for 9/11, Muslim Americans in particular, in the same way that Germans perceived Jews in the 1930s as collectively guilty for the crucifixion of Jesus. I read something in the Los Angeles Times just this past week where a young 13-year-old was quoted as saying that a Muslim 13-year-old, when he went to school in Madeira, California, he sometimes hears students say to him that he's a terrorist and tease him. And it just occurs to me that that's exactly the way that Germans used to speak to Jewish children, and they'd say, "You crucified Christ." In other words, the same notion of collective guilt, where people aren't being treated as individuals, is, I think, one of the most pernicious aspects of this, of what's happening in America today. And I think that the reason that I was interested in starting this idea of going to lunch with Muslims in my community and hoping that this idea would spread with others, or having coffee, or again just taking a walk, just getting to know the Muslims in my community, has to do with this notion that we've got to treat each other as complicated individuals and take one another seriously as human beings, and not just scapegoat and stereotype one another.